On October 24th, 1907, the New York Stock Exchange floor froze. The tickers jammed. Brokers stopped shouting. In the heart of the world's financial capital, panic swept through the city like a cold wind. Banks failed. Fortunes vanished. The world's financial center teetered on the edge of ruin. But behind the headlines, a secret network of financiers and shadow money was pulling the strings. In the back rooms of Wall Street, men like J.P. Morgan, James Stillman, and George F. Baker met in private clubs and candlelit offices. They whispered over ledgers, shuffled millions between accounts, and decided who would survive and who would be ruined. A single morning revealed the true fragility of American finance. The emotional echo was fear, the pride of a booming market, the pain of sudden collapse, the shock of waking up to a world where trust had evaporated. The panic of 1907 felt disturbingly similar to the uncertainty of 1929, 2008, and every modern crash. Each time, leaders promised stability. Each time, the rules changed and the dominoes fell faster. How did hidden money decide who survived and who was ruined? The answer is in the way Wall Street's fortunes were built not just on stocks and bonds, but on a web of secret loans, shadow banks, and unregulated power. But to see how the collapse began, we need to go back to the money men who built the system. In the decades after the Civil War, Wall Street became the beating heart of American ambition. The Gilded Age was a time of titans: J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, E.H. Harriman, men whose names became synonymous with power and wealth. Their fortunes were built not just on oil, steel, and railroads, but on a new kind of financial engineering. Trusts and holding companies dominated the landscape. Rockefeller's Standard Oil controlled 90% of the nation's refineries. Morgan's syndicates financed railroads from coast to coast. The emotional impact was awe and suspicion, the pride of progress, the pain of inequality, the shock of seeing a handful of men control the nation's destiny. But the real innovation was in the shadows. Wall Street's titans created a parallel system of shadow banks, unregulated pools of capital, private lending clubs, and secret partnerships. The term money trust entered the headlines. The public saw the surface: skyscrapers, ticker tape, and millionaires. But the real power was in the back rooms, where fortunes were made and lost on a handshake. The call loan market became the engine of speculation. Brokers borrowed millions overnight to fund stock purchases, using shares as collateral. The system was built on trust until it wasn't. A single rumor could trigger a run on a bank, a cascade of margin calls, and a market crash. How did Wall Street's titans create fortunes out of thin air? Why did the richest men in America fear a run on their own banks? The answer is in the way unregulated money, unchecked ambition, and the hunger for profit can build a system that looks stable until the first shock hits. The system's hidden wiring would be tested by the first true financial earthquake. By the turn of the 20th century, Wall Street's money market was a machine running at breakneck speed. Every morning, brokers and bankers gathered in the call loan market, a daily auction where fortunes were made and lost in minutes. Here, banks lent money overnight to speculators who used it to buy stocks on margin. The rates could swing from 2% to 100% in a single day, depending on demand and fear. The emotional energy was electric. The promise of easy money drew crowds to the curb outside the exchange. Ticker tape spilled from windows. The city's newspapers published daily lists of who had borrowed, who had paid, and who was teetering on the edge. The term call loan became a household phrase. It was the fuel for the boom and the fuse for the bust. But the real risk was hidden. The system was built on leverage, borrowed money stacked on borrowed money. A single dollar could be lent, relent, and relent again, multiplying the bets in the market. The emotional echo was greed and anxiety, the pride of a bull market, the pain of knowing it could all vanish in a day. Clearinghouses, the private clubs of the banking world, were supposed to keep the system safe. They settled trades, guaranteed payments, and provided emergency loans. But they were unregulated, run by the very bankers who stood to lose the most. When panic hit, the clearinghouses could freeze credit, call in loans, and trigger a cascade of forced selling. How did overnight money fuel a decade of boom and set the stage for disaster? What happens when liquidity vanishes in a single afternoon? The answer is in the way hidden leverage and unregulated lending can turn a market into a powder keg. The collapse would reveal just how much of Wall Street's wealth was built on borrowed time. On October 22, 1907, the Knickerbocker Trust Company, one of New York's largest, suddenly closed its doors. Word spread like wildfire. By noon, crowds jammed the sidewalks, desperate to withdraw their savings. The emotional shock was instant. The pride of a booming city, the pain of panic, the fear that no bank was safe. Within hours, the panic leapt from one institution to another. Bankers called in loans, brokers dumped stocks to raise cash. Short sellers, smelling blood, attacked the market, driving prices lower and forcing more liquidations. The term short squeeze became a weapon. As prices fell, those who had bet against the market rushed to cover, fueling wild swings and deeper losses. The city's clearinghouses froze credit. The money market seized up. The emotional echo was chaos, the pride of Wall Street, the pain of collapse, the shock of seeing fortunes erased in a single day. In the midst of the storm, one man moved to save the system. J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in America, summoned the city's top financiers to his library on Madison Avenue. He locked the doors. No one would leave until a rescue plan was forged. Through the night, Morgan and his allies pored over balance sheets, negotiated secret deals, and pledged millions to keep the banks afloat. The emotional tension was palpable. The fate of Wall Street rested on one man's word. By dawn, the rescue was in motion. Morgan's syndicate injected cash into failing banks, calmed the markets, and stopped the panic, at least for now. The term lender of last resort took on new meaning. The central bank. America didn't have was replaced by a single financier, will. How did a single trust's collapse threaten the entire system? Why did the fate of Wall Street rest on one man's word? The answer is in the way hidden money, personal power, and the absence of regulation can turn a market into a battlefield. But the rescue came with a price, and a new kind of power. In the wake of the 1907 panic, the city's marble banks and mahogany boardrooms were filled with questions and with fear. Congress launched a sweeping investigation into the so-called money trust. The public wanted answers. How could a handful of men control the fate of the nation or finances? Why did the system depend on secret rescues and private deals? The Aldrich Commission, led by Senator Nelson Aldrich, traveled to Europe to study the world's central banks. Their report was clear. America needed its own central bank, a lender of last resort that could provide liquidity in a crisis, regulate the money supply, and oversee the nation's banks. In 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law. The Fed was born. 12 regional banks, one central board, and a new power to print money and set interest rates. The emotional echo was hope, the promise that panics could be prevented, that the system would be safer, that the ghosts of 1907 would never return. But the old networks of hidden money adapted. Wall Street's titans found new ways to influence policy. The term regulatory capture entered the language. The regulators were often former bankers, and the lines between public and private blurred. The Fed's power to rescue banks created a new risk, moral hazard. If bankers believed they would always be bailed out, would they take even bigger risks? The emotional tension was unresolved. The pride of reform, the pain of new crises, the shock of seeing the same patterns return. The lessons of 1907 would echo in every crash that followed. 1929, 1987, 2008, and beyond. Did the Fed end financial panics, or just change their shape? How did Wall Street's shadow money survive the age of reform? The answer is in the way power adapts and how every new rule creates new loopholes. The lessons of 1907 would echo in every crash that followed. The panic of 1907 was supposed to be the last of its kind. But the pattern never died. In 1929, the stock market crashed again. This time, the leverage was in margin loans and investment trusts. In 2008, the world watched as subprime mortgages, CDOs, and shadow banks brought the system to its knees. In 2026, new financial products and digital assets threaten to repeat the cycle. Each time, the details change. The names on the doors are different. The technology is faster, but the core risks, hidden leverage, unregulated money, and the fragile trust that holds it all together never go away. The emotional echo is timeless. The pride of a bull market, the pain of a crash, the shock of seeing fortunes vanish overnight. The panic of 1929 feels disturbingly similar to the uncertainty of 2008, and both feel eerily close to the anxiety of today. Each time, the world's leaders promise, never again. Each time, the cycle returns. The economic term systemic risk is not just a theory, it's a lived reality. When trust breaks, the contagion spreads. The term contagion, once used for disease, now describes the way panic jumps from bank to bank, market to market, country to country. Financial innovation is always a double-edged sword. It brings new opportunities, but also new dangers. Are today's markets any safer than 1907's? What did the first collapse teach that Wall Street keeps forgetting? The answer is in the way every generation believes it has tamed risk until the next hidden money panic proves otherwise. So what can you do before the next hidden money panic? The panic of 1907 is more than a story of failed banks and vanished fortunes. It is a warning, etched in the ledgers of Wall Street and the memories of every family that lost their savings, about the real cost of hidden money. The emotional echo is timeless. The pride of a nation in boom, the pain of collapse, the shock of waking up to new rules. Every cycle repeats. Leverage builds in the shadows. Trust grows complacent. A new product, a new market, a new promise, until the next shock exposes the cracks. The panic of 1929, the meltdown of 2008, the anxiety of 2026, each is a reminder that the system's greatest risk is the one you can TC. The lesson is clear. The cost of easy money is not just measured in profits or losses, but in the fragility of the system itself. The dominoes always fall faster than anyone expects. The rules always change when it's too late to prepare. Will you be ready when the next shadow panic hits? Will you recognize the signals before the headlines hit? The answers are hidden in the past, if you know where to look. Don't assume the rules of money and power are set in stone. Watch for the signals: rising debt, sudden deals, the quiet buildup of leverage. Pay attention to the canaries, liquidity crunches, new forms of shadow banking, and the fine print in every contract. In every reset, someone is early, someone is late, and someone never even realizes a reset happened. Will you be ready when the next hidden money crisis comes? Will you recognize the signals before the headlines hit? Subscribe for more cinematic economic history and learn how to spot the next hidden money crisis before it hits.